Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today, he's the co founder and the CMO of a company called Empire Flippers. Now, they are the world's leading marketplace for buying and selling established and profitable online businesses. Over 245,000 users, $450 million worth of deals. There's a lot of things that this guy actually does really cool and really well. In fact, his bio, like most of our guests, because they all are successful in their own right, goes on and on and on. Rather than just keep diving in to the bio, let's just figure out what makes Justin Cooke awesome. So, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Charles. Appreciate it.
No worries, buddy. So you and I are just prior to this recording, you were telling me about your Navy experience and so forth. And I'm curious, you've been involved in creating this company that's done really, really well. How did the Navy and your experience in the Navy impact your ability to create the growth that you've created?
I mean, when you're in the military, there's a big push for conformity, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of buck that trend. And so I wasn't very conformist before I joined, and I learned to kind of like fall in line and listen to orders. And like that's not terribly helpful as an entrepreneur, maybe as an employee, but not as an entrepreneur. And so I had to unlearn some of the things I learned in the Navy when I got out to become an entrepreneur.
So actually, why don't we talk about sort of those failures now and kind of dive in? So most business owners, they take their business to a point where it is because of word of mouth and referrals. And then they struggle. Hard work has always been their primary driving factor. Was there ever a point in time where that became is that where you guys were, or did you immediately go from there and understand what it takes to create scalable, sustainable strategies?
We didn't. We had lots of problems starting off. We've had multiple businesses, and multiple businesses failed prior to Empire Flippers. So my current business partner and I, we were involved in a mortgage business, and this is back in the 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010 days, which that didn't go so well, right? The mortgage bust. We built an outsourcing company. So in 2010, my business partner and I moved to the Philippines to start an outsourcing company. We'd set up an office. We had a small team of 30, 40 people in the Philippines working for us. We had our previous employer that Joe and I both worked for as kind of middle management. And our major customer was our previous employer. I think they had, 25 of the 35 employees we had or something. And, that first year, within 6 months, they started cutting back and cutting back. And we were trying to work a referral network, and we would get two employees here, 3 employees there, but we'd lose 4 here, 5 there. So we weren't gaining any ground, to the point where we got small enough and we were making so little money that we couldn't afford to keep the office open in the Philippines.
Mom.
And so that was a big loser moment for us, where we thought we really suck. Like, you don't have a business. If you can't keep your office open, we're going to have everyone go work from home. We couldn't build this international company we were trying to build. And so it was really depressing for us. It turns out that like having a remote company is really interesting. When you have everyone kind of work from home or eventually work from anywhere, that's a huge blessing, but we didn't know it at the time, and we're pretty disappointed
Yeah,
with it.
I get it.
Um, so yeah, I mean that was a big one for me. Part of our pivot from the outsourcing company to Empire Flippers was just trying to keep our staff in the Philippines employed. Like, we'll eventually expand the outsourcing company, but how do we just keep them paid, right? And like keep them on payroll without laying everyone off. And so we tried a bunch of things. One of the things we started doing was building these little niche websites that made money via AdSense. We had a whole process. And so we started building these small little sites that would make $50 a month, $100 a month, $150 a month. But we had a whole team in the Philippines that could just bang these out, right? So we just built a whole machine. First it was me trying to figure it out, buying the domains and doing it. And then
Yeah.
we made a process out of it and handed it off to our team. So we started building these sites, and we were spending money, but it takes a while for them to get up, ramped up and earning. We said, how do we make this work? And so we realized we could probably sell these off, realize all the earnings up front, and reinvest that into the machine to build more and make it a perpetuating business, basically. So we started doing that. We started selling off these sites, and we realized there's a hungry audience for people willing to buy $100 a month, $200 a month, $500 a month little websites. And as we started doing that, and we would talk about it very publicly, and that helped build audience, right? And then a lot of people started building along with us and telling us about their success. We'd sell their $15,000 website. Maybe it makes 80 bucks a month, 90 bucks a month, sell for $1,500 for them and take a piece. And then we started doing $10,000 websites, and then $40,000 websites, and then $500,000 websites. To date, I think the largest deal we've done is right around 13 million.
Um,
So yeah, it really scaled up from there. And it started with us just kind of building these niche websites so we could keep our business afloat.
One of the principles that I see over and over again, actually, it was the first time I heard it was Richard Branson, where he attributes his success ultimately to consistent, persistent, imperfect action just over and over and over again.
Hmm.
You know, Branson was once quoted not too long ago. Somebody asked him if he still fails. And he said, "Oh, I fail every day. In fact, the only difference between failing now and failing back then is that it's more public today, and carries a lot more zeros behind it today when I fail than it did back then." But he also followed up and said, "Look, the only reason why I'm a billionaire, most people aren't, is because maybe I'm just dumb enough to keep standing up after I've been knocked down. And I just keep getting up and getting up and getting up and getting up." And I had another mentor of mine at one point that had said that the reason why, or what he said was, you are going to be the closest you'll ever be to success at the very moment that you want to quit more than anything else in the world. And I remember thinking that he didn't quite understand, or maybe that was his situation or whatever that might be. But it was only until later that I realized what he meant, that you do go through these hardships and there's these doubts in your mind, and you're like, can I do this?
If you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough,
It's so true.
right?
It's so
Are you
true.
familiar with the book, Seth Godin? It's a long time ago, but it's called The Dip. And
Uh,
so what you're describing kind of reminds me of that. Seth Godin, The Dip, and it's basically in your entrepreneurial path, we're going to go through a point that's just, much more difficult. That's like, and a lot of people, they bail at that point and they leave, but they're, darkest before the dawn, all kinds of cliches you could say, but they're
yeah,
just about to come out of that dip and they can't stomach it. They can't do it. And I think entrepreneurship is kind of surviving that dip. I think Branson put it much more succinctly than I do, but I tell people all the time to be the blah 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 guy. And what I mean by blah 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 is like, be the guy that I can say, hey, oh, I got a friend that does this. He does it really well. He's done it for 10 years. This is my blah 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 guy. Right? And like a lot of my friends, peers, other entrepreneurs I've known for a decade, they've done 5 different businesses,
yeah,
right? They chase a new shiny object because that's the new trend. And, like if I'm looking to refer them to someone, I don't even know what they're working on that year,
yeah.
right? So I can't refer them any business because who knows what, funny schemes they're up to, crypto trading or whatever.
But every time you jump from one thing to another, you're going to another situation where there's no momentum, no data, no information, and you got to start from scratch all over again. Yet, when you look at companies that are building a scalable marketing and sales strategy, and what I find is most fascinating is that everything works and nothing works at the same time. I don't care if we're talking yellow pages, skywriting, billboards, whatever that might be. I've been in this business long enough to know that it's not the strategy. Strategies are just tools. It's how you use it, and do you know how to use it? And then once you start collecting data, open up the hood and look underneath to see which parts are working, which parts aren't. And if you just focus in on the little parts that aren't working and you fix those, the whole thing changes. There's so many
Yeah.
times we see people that turn around and they throw a strategy out the window and they don't do it. One particular person, they very large brand, hired me, and they wanted to have more leads. And they called me up, can you show us how to bring in more leads? Particularly, we want outbound and we want you to be able to help. Well, I understand you want more leads, but before we do that, can I take a look at what your current process right now?
What you're doing with the leads you have.
Would you believe that what was going on was they would schedule appointments for whatever reason? Their software broke and it wasn't sending any appointment reminders or booking confirmations.
Yeah.
So they're ready to start something new. One little fix, 30 seconds, and they actually needed to reduce their leads because they had too many appointments on the books.
Charles, we do this all the time. We make lots of mistakes, and we found one recently so similar. People would go to schedule a call with our sales team. They'd be looking at a listing for sale, one of the business we have for sale, and go to schedule a call. And if the calendar was full, You would click the button and it just wasn't working. And this
Yeah.
is probably, I don't know, a month or something. And we were like, why are our calls down? We're like, oh, because they can't book the call. That's a bit of a problem. We were pretty frustrated with that one. But yeah, you run into
Oh,
these things all the time. There's always something breaking, right?
I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but because I'm the coach and I'm supposed to have all this stuff figured out, right? So I was getting together with my team and we're saying, what is happening? Why is our cost per lead like going through the roof? And so the initial gut response, like everybody, has is there's a problem with AdWords. There's a problem. That's what we would tend to think. So we have this process where we go through a checklist of all the different functions. And one of the things we had to check was our mobile website. When we went to our mobile website, it must have been when a plugin updated.
Yeah.
You couldn't have done business with us if you tried. You couldn't fill out a form. None of the links worked, like nothing.
Oh my
I'm
God.
sitting there going, you have got to be kidding me right now.
Yeah, yeah, and these things happen. One of the things, like the bigger picture here, kind of the broader point, I think, is that at least for us, as we've gotten bigger and we've done more business and added more people to the team, and we have levels of management, things get complicated, overly complicated, right? And so, in our business, we found unintentional, but like bloat over time, or like what started off with as a good idea, we tweaked and twisted until it's like this like conglomeration of mess. And there's a point at which you can't tweak it anymore. You have to scrap it and go in a different direction or simplify it. And sometimes you have employees too that will like overly complicate things. There's just you end up as you
Yeah.
grow, there's this overcomplication in business. And we're in the process now of like really trying to get back to basics. So yeah, there's always something to do, right? There's always some struggle you're dealing with. That's business.
Simplification is the key to scaling.
Yeah.
A gentleman replied to me on Twitter and he gave a quote and he said, people don't fail because it was too simple. And I thought about that and I was like, that's actually interesting. You can optimize, you can complicate to a certain degree and optimize. People won't fail if it's too simple. There's actually a lot of truth to that. And many times when you look at companies that are up to that 1 million mark, they think, okay, the secret is to put out as many SKUs and products and everything else out there, just anything that we can imagine doing, let's do it. And if you're an agency or a service provider, we'll customize it. You tell us what you want, and we will do everything. Your wishes are commands.
Yeah.
But then you look at the most successful companies in the world, and it's like, okay, let's take Apple, for example. Apple has one main phone or two laptops, like the Air and the other one, right? And so it's very simple. But in contrary, you've got Samsung. And Samsung, there's God knows how many different phones. You buy a TV, a refrigerator, whatever. Samsung, they have all these SKUs. They're not Apple size.
Yeah. Yeah, in our world, we call it a niching down, right? So niche down to what you're best at. And by the way, we made that same mistake with our outsourcing company when we started. Our unique advantage was we were Americans on the ground. So we're Americans in the Philippines, working with a Philippines crew that can get it done for you. But we tried to be everything to everyone. And that
Yep,
was a recipe for failure
sure.
because we would end up taking it like it's hard to say no to money. And the problem is if you're not like best in class at what you do, they'll drop you in 3 months when it's not working exactly as they expected. And so the waste of time on onboarding and kind of learning their process, it isn't worth the money. But if you're gonna be an outsourcing company, don't be a general outsourcing company. Be a back-end bookkeeping outsourcing company and crush
Yeah.
it. I mean,
See,
when you hit the cap, that's a good time to kind of like level up when you see that growth curve peaking.
sure. And like you said, I mean, we're preconditioned into also looking for specialists as well. If you have a problem that's important to you, you're going to assume the person who sells it is going to be the one who's going to produce it the best. The processes that it makes it simpler to scale because you're going to have processes, you're going to be able to refine them, you're going to be able to optimize them. Your marketing will be more efficient, as you just mentioned. You'll be able to dominate a particular space. You can create a thought leadership and space and whatnot. And this stuff was really essential to creating that sustainable growth, 2023 and all years prior. But now, towards the end of 2023, 2024, we're up against something that the world's never seen before that is actually going to require specialization. Because now we're talking about AI, and people are just not prepared for the impact that AI is going to have on their business. And what it's ultimately doing is forcing specialization because you've got AI that is commoditizing content to a certain point. We won't need answers next year. We just won't need answers because all the answers will be provided to us at a very standard format.
A good example of that, I knew a guy that's had a business where he sold trolling motors, right, for like bass fishing or whatever.
Sure.
But and he loved it. He was like deep into fishing, loved fishing, like knew all about it. So he would talk about the types of trolling motors you could use with, and I don't know the space at all, so I'm gonna screw
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
something here. But like with the lures you use with this kind of motor is better because they're quieter, or I don't know, whatever. But like he knew that like super well and could sell to and speak to people that are deep because it's a real passion thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a unique thing that AI can't do today, right? They don't have AI isn't out there fishing and have the kind of firsthand knowledge. Now it can source a lot of that. Long term, I think AI, I'm like a bit of an AI doomer. I think a lot of it's gonna go crazy,
Well,
just outside of the business world. But yeah, I mean, I think right now and then for the next few years, like that's still a really viable strategy.
here's the thing about AI, right? Like, they're on one hand, at a macro level, super concerning. If nobody puts a cap on it at some point, like AI, when you understand it, it wants to survive and continues to grow and will eventually outsmart humans. And then there's an extinction event. That's on a macro level, but
Sure.
other people have to worry about the macro level. On an individual level, though, it is massively exciting and a huge opportunity because when you know how to ask the right questions, AI will teach you how to compete against AI and how to remain relevant with AI
Yeah. It's
and
all
how to work
prompt
with it.
creation, prompt engineering. Yeah.
That's phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal opportunity. And we're seeing companies that right now, already in 2023, some of our clients have already started to adopt AI at a very basic level, and their team members have been able to delegate their lowest value tasks to AI, but they're replacing their time with higher value activities. So the return on their time, the value of their time goes up and up and up. And it was a fascinating experience and experiment because as I'm watching this go through, two scenarios could happen. One scenario is they get lazy, they delegate their lowest value activities. The next scenario is they are going to find ways to become more valuable to the company. And that's exactly what happened. I
There's
think,
there's a lot of fear in our space around AI, particularly on the content side of things, right?
oh
And with
God,
with
yeah.
some reason to be, right? There's a lot of things going on there. With at Empire Flippers, we're basically platform independent. We don't particularly care the types of online business we sell. So I know some people on our team are like, oh, content sites. I don't know. Buyers are a little hesitant to buy. I mean, if that's the case, there's new service businesses that do like prompt generation. There's all kinds of businesses that it can be bought and sold that will continue to be up and coming. So like we don't particularly care the types of businesses, but yeah, lots of industries are going to be disrupted by AI for sure.
Well, I think you give a perfect example. Most people are going to look at sites like that. This is where the strategic advantage goes to those people that are willing to go from a level one thinking to level two.
Mhm.
Most of the planet is level one. Most of the planet says, this is what I see. So it must be this. And so that's it. And you see it just today. The headline says this. I'm not going to question it. This is what it is. These people are bad. These people are good, and so forth. Level two thinking is you begin to ask different questions and go deeper. And so, like that website with the content, level two thinking would be, okay,
Yeah.
how can AI support this? How can AI make this more valuable? So instead of why is this all going to suck? It's like, how do we make this more valuable in the face of the existing threats?
Well, how I explain it is like the way we make money is a disconnect between what the buyer's thinking and the seller's thinking. But one of the reasons is sellers think this is as big as it's going to get. I can't make this business any bigger. And they're like, I've maximized it. I've maximized the channels. It can't make any more money. I'm getting away with something by selling this to a buyer, right? They're not doing these other channels
Yeah.
that I know quite well. And so
Yeah.
the buyer's like, this seller is kind of dumb for not doing all these other channels. It's maxed out, and the buyer going, the seller doesn't know what he's doing. So it's the same thing in the AI space, right? So you're gonna have someone that goes, look, I've kind of maximized as much as big as it can get, and you have someone else that's really good with prompt engineering that already has like is plugged into AI and said, look, I can automate so much of this, I can cut
Yeah.
costs significantly here. So this business is doing 15,000 a month of profit. I can get it at 22, 23 pretty easily, right? And that significantly improves the value. So it's gonna be the same thing, just in a different scope.
Let's pretend for a minute that they actually did maximize every possible way of acquiring clients. There's still an opportunity for the right buyer.
I hate the word, but like the synergies, right? So I got a
Oh,
business selling, and the same example I used before. Like I sell bait and whatever, like all the stuff around fishing, and I buy a trolling motor site just because it's the right audience, and I can sell them new products, increase, as you said, improve LTV, and make more money across businesses, right?
I have
The
a
strategics
client
do
that
it
I'll
all
be
the time.
speaking to in, the next few minutes here. And what he did is he bought a business, and he said, I actually don't even care what the business does. What matters to me is they have a super engaged Facebook group of my ideal buyers. And he said, that in and of itself is where the value is. And sure enough, once he acquired the company, the revenue that he was bringing in from the company itself, like that was icing on the cake. But he better than doubled his return just by the engaged Facebook group.
Yeah, well, the Facebook groups can be on their own valuable, and you can buy them cheaper because they don't make any money. Now, sometimes people overvalue things. This happens all the time. Let me tell you one of the problems we had. So, like, because Empire Flippers, right? We have people buy and sell internet companies and websites and FBA business or whatever. But if you're looking to buy an online business, you probably heard of us, right? Or you're going to come across us somehow. And the problem with our business, it's good business, right? But it requires a certain skill set. Not everyone can run an online business. You should go like buy a domain and set up host it. Like you got to have like certain skills to do it. And we'd run across people all the time at Empire Flows. They're like, look, I want to buy a business, but I don't have any skills. And we're like, there's some courses out there you can go take a look at, try and run a business, build one up, and then you can buy one after. And we realized we're like throwing all this money away. And this is like a high quality problem, right? I have the money to invest, but I don't have the skills or in some cases the time. And so that's one of the reasons people came to us so many times this way. Finally, we're a little slow. So we created a company called Web Street, which is basically a marketplace for operators and investors. And so we know the people that buy them and their success rate afterwards. So we've got all these people that have skills at running online businesses, which is a valuable resource. And we've got all these investors that don't have the time and the money to get involved. What we wanted to do was create a marketplace where we could pair those an operator with proven skills and investors with cash to invest. They're looking for returns. And so that's kind of what we did with Web Street. Now, the cool thing about that is at Empire Flippers, people with the skills and time to run an online business is somewhat limited. Money's not limited. So, like, we think Web Street has a much wider audience potentially, right? And so we've been doing it a couple of years now. We've raised, I think, right around 30 million, and we're delivering returns. We expect 20 to 25% returns IRR, and we're doing like 3 to 4% distributions quarterly right now. So it seems like it'll hold up. When we started it, we told the investors that were getting involved, we're like, look, we don't know how this is going to work, but this is our plan. This is our strategy. We're going to give it a shot. And so we gave all the people that invested with us like early access to the next one and the next one to
Sure.
kind of, benefit them. And yeah, it's done really well. With Empire Flippers, we're like brokering businesses and we're in the space and we're like, elbows deep in the work and talking to people and like figuring out how it works. And then we kind of like, you see problems that need solving.
Yeah.
And some of them you don't bother with. And some of them like have enough potential, like the risk is worth the reward. And so
Sure.
our view was like, that's going to make sense, I think, long term.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We're seeing again a trend moving into 2024 is that 2023 and prior, people expected you to meet their needs. 2024, people are expecting you to anticipate their needs.
Mm.
And that was you had your ear on the ground with Empire Flippers, and then you're seeing this need and you're kind of anticipating it. And I think you're positioning yourself well there because it's like people are asking for it. And there's not a solution right now, and it
Well, it's cash
worked
flow too.
well.
Like they haven't, you're familiar with Masterworks, I'm sure, Picasso or something. You invest and they invest in these art pieces, and then you gain value over a number of years through appreciation of the asset,
Yep.
right? And that's cool, and I like it, but, like, it's not cash flow, it's literally
Yeah.
just something that sits there,
Yep.
right? And so what we're doing is with and particularly in, like, a down economy or a unstable economy, something that delivers yield, delivers cash flow on a quarterly basis is way more attractive,
Yeah.
right? And so we're able to do effectively the same thing, but with an asset that spits out cash. So that's kind of, just from an investor perspective, that's interesting. Now, the only thing is we need more track record. We've been doing it a few years. So we need to start exiting some of those businesses so we can give a final return to round one,
Sure.
round two. And then I think we'll be able to embrace the big money. The real issue there is the operators, not the money. Because
Yep.
once we get the track record, there's plenty of
Yep.
money out there looking for yield. The operators is kind of our secret sauce there.
Got it. Makes sense. What would you say is the biggest, best tip that you could give our listeners who want to take their business beyond seven figures?
I mean, one of the things that was super helpful for us is just SOPs, standard operating procedures, making sure we have documented processes in place. And it's really helpful as you get beyond a dozen or 2 dozen people. It's really easy with a small team to kind of like keep everything in order because it's a small team, you're all
Yep.
working together, everyone's focused. And as you
Everybody.
scale and you have a larger team, it's hard to kind of keep everyone on the same page. And I
Yeah.
think the SOPs really help with that. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my tip.
Eliminates variation, allows for optimization, and,
Yep.
puts the lid on any fires that might end up happening.
You sound like you've done these before. One other thing I'll say that we did as strategic, so we had strategy meetings, and this started when it was just Joe and I, literally just us with our Philippines team. And every quarter we would sit down and we would start with our like 3 to 5 year long term vision, and then you go to the annual goal. Like if we're going to be there in 4 years, what do we have to do this year as a goalpost to get to that stage? And
Yep.
then we work backwards. We go, okay, what are we doing next quarter? And so it started with just Joe and I doing it in the Philippines to involving our own team, finally just our management team. But we've done that every quarter for more than a decade now. And that's been super helpful to our success. So long-term vision, paint the picture of what the company's gonna look like, go to the annual goal, and we do that once a year.
Yeah.
And then every quarter, we're looking at previous quarter, what we did, and then next quarter, what are the goals that are going to get us to our annual goal? That's been, it goes like this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a
Sure.
straight line, but like at least you're directional, right? We're
Yep.
directionally correct. And that's been super helpful.
Awesome. Justin, people want to learn more about you and the companies that you have. Where do we send them?
I'm on the Twitters or X is known now. You can check me out there. We got our websites, empireflippers.com. And then for Web Street, that's webstreet.co.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. For more tips, strategies, and information for taking your company beyond seven figures, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my friend Justin Cooke, and I will see you in another episode.